Welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast. I'm entertainer writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. I'm joined now by my co-host, Eri Hersey, and we are recording this week's episode on Thursday, June 20th, which is the first day of summer. But Universal fans might have something else on their minds today. Isn't that right, Eric?
That's right, Jim. So we were going to record on Tuesday, kind of like what we normally do. But those social posts came out and Universal gave us a teaser. A lot of lightning strikes and so forth, and 6.20.24. So we had a little hunch that maybe we should push this off and wait until record till today. And I'm glad we did, because my Twitter is ablaze, literally almost as if it's like a caused by some monsters. It's the Dark Universe that came out. So, Jim, have you got to take a look at what Universal shared with us today about their new park?
Yeah, I spent a good chunk of this afternoon drilling down into the two videos and all the images that they shared. And what's kind of ironic here is that this bit of news, big bit of news, lines up perfectly with our feature story for this week's show, which continues to talk about how Universal kept trying to find ways to bring their classic monsters into the parks. But we'll talk about that more later on in today's show. But right now, before we get started, we'd like to acknowledge our sponsor, which of course is touringplans.com. Touring plans help you save time and money at theme parks like Universal Studios and also the ones at Walt Disney World. So please check them out at touringplans.com. Okay, Eric, so let's just jump into it. So we got a giant info dump on Dark Universe, and you looked at the exact same stuff that I looked at. So what's your take on this new land for Epic Universe?
Jim, I think I mentioned it early on in one of the earlier podcasts. This is the land that actually got my attention. This is 100%. When we're doing a podcast right now, I am invested in Universal because I said, hold on, that looks really cool. And that was just a couple concept art. So in my opinion, right now, it actually is even better. The fact is, and I don't think I'm alone. And I was telling you this kind of offline, I can't tell if the algorithms on social really understand me now and they're just feeding me all this, or if everyone is really excited about this land, because I was scrolling through and it was just one after another, excited about, this attraction, excited about this offering. It just back and forth. So I'm jazzed about it. And there's a lot of information. It was 2 rides that were announced today, some eating establishments, some entertainment, some meet and greets. So, and I was much like you. We watched it was a 2 or 3 minute video, and then you had like a fly around and lots of great concept art. So the number one thing that I noticed is the Monsters Unchained, the Frankenstein experiment. So what do you know about this attraction?
Well, I mean, this is supposed to be the of all of the cutting edge stuff that is being done by Universal Creative for Epic Universe. This is supposedly the moonshot. There is so much. In fact, I want to say, as part of the video discussing this land for Universal's third theme park, talked about how they were using every technology they had available, and then they realized, well, we actually have to invent tech for this particular attraction. And what's kind of interesting is this is the attraction that you're naturally going to be drawn to, because I think they mentioned that as you come through the portal, which has electricity pulsing on it, you see electric wires, electricity traveling through the land, but they're all going to a central point, which is the Frankenstein Castle, where Dr. Frankenstein's great granddaughter Victoria is now experimenting on the Universal monsters. But again, you're going to know where to go because the electricity all moves in that direction, all goes to the Frankenstein estate. And what did you make of the art?
Well, I think the art and truthfully, when they were showing from the video, they showed kind of like Dracula and it seemed like CGI, right? And they were just kind of do that. But then they cut to a shot that is of the Wolfman that is moving around. And I saw online that it almost like a Zapruder film, people were slowing it down. They're like, hold on, that's not CGI. That's an actual animatronic. So there is going to be some really cool animatronics in this attraction, which I'm excited about because I naturally love a dark ride. So this seems like it is a simulation thrill, like simulator dark ride, right? And not a roller coaster. Normally you would say, oh, the roller coaster's the big attraction here. But like from my point of view, and the electricity is also following. So I'm very excited about this one and the creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm pretty jazzed that he's included.
Yeah, in fact, what's interesting is that you bring up the creature from the Black Lagoon because early plans for this park suggested that there's an expansion pad within Dark Universe that was deliberately set aside for a creature from the Black Lagoon ride or potentially a stunt show. That again, that's further on down the line. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets his own attraction at some point. But you mentioned the Wolfman, who again features in this ride because supposedly it's Dracula himself who unleashes all of the monsters inside of the Frankenstein estate, and you're now trying to get away from everybody. But further on in the forest, we get the Curse of the Werewolf ride, which I have to admit I'm kind of intrigued. They're describing as a spinning family coaster. Built around the werewolf.
Listen, we know that those exist, right? We our friend Jim Schul built one of those out in Paris with Crush's coaster, right? So we saw some of this. They were testing this ride a couple months ago, and we got some nice aerial footage to kind of see. So this wasn't really much of a shocker, but there was this in the concept art. There is a very looming Wolfman that kind of has been compared to the Yeti in Animal Kingdom. I'm seeing stuff like that. So if there's a giant animatronic in that nature, now this we don't know. We don't know what it is, but from a there's a cart, like a wagon cart that starts it off, and I believe there's some story of you're cursed. We know that you're cursed as you're going on. So there's like a nice little story that goes along with the ride, and it looks like a thrill. And I don't know if I've been on too many spinning, family coasters. I'm trying to think if there's any stateside that I've been on yet, but I'll give it a try. I'll certainly give it a try. The thing is, it's a 40 height requirement. The other ride, the actual Unchained, is 48. So it's really funny that the coaster actually has the lower height. I had to do a double take.
Interesting. Now, you mentioned the height differential, and also it's worth noting that as part of the materials that were made available for Dark Universe, they did mention that a number of these attractions would, for lack of a better term, be PG-13. Because again, they're going to be on the intense side. That this is leaning into the horror aspect. Though that said, I mean, I have to admit, I was intrigued to see, instead of the Bippity Boppity Boutique, this part of the park is going to feature the Darkmoor Monster Makeup Experience.
Right.
Do you see Miles? It's like, oh yeah, we got to do this. I mean,
I could see Miles asking for that. Here's the deal: is we know that there's a lot of water attractions in various lands. So I don't know how much they're going to cost. They did this. They did like a trial run recently. We talked about how you could do a monster makeup in one of the, I think it might've been in City Walk, and we were kind of looking at. So I wonder if that was a trial to see like, all right, what this space might be. And they went ahead with it to see. But I mean, we did back in the day. I mean, we did the Pirates makeover in the Magic Kingdom. So we had our boy do that, and he loved it, and had a fake beard and everything. So I could see it working. Now, a lot of things have to come to play. I always say do it early in the day so we can get our use out of the monster makeup. Scare as many people as you can.
Okay. Now, so we have that makeup experience, but again, it's a theme park, so that there's going to be dining. And what do we make of what of it? We had the Das Steakhouse, which I I forget which of the Universal Parks and Experience folks was delighted to say, we're going to have steak on steaks,
Right. Oh yeah.
and
No, I felt like we were going to be kind of the meal there. It's vampires, right? It's housed by vampires.
The familiars sort of wandering around the restaurant. And I mean, again, what always intrigues me about when they talk about those sorts of things, it's like, okay, that's cool. That'll be there for the opening month, maybe the opening summer. I'm going to be intrigued come the fall to see if the familiars are still wandering around that steakhouse.
Right.
Likewise, the Burning Blade Tavern, which that's a callback to the mill from the original Frankenstein movie from 31. Just and the notion that it will be continuously in flames. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I kind of like that. I'm wondering if it'll be continual, because my thought is it's probably going to be one of those things. I just don't know how you could do that over and over, just fire. But I'm guessing, I bet at times they'll just turn it on and kind of get your attraction, almost like a fire breathing dragon or something in that notion. I think it'd be great. I mean, it's going to serve like your bratwurst, your pretzels, your beverages, all types. I love the theming of both of these restaurants. Like just right off the get-go, I like, even if I didn't want to eat, I'm going to walk in there and look at these areas. So I just love the entire theme of this land. I don't know. And I'm not one to say I've watched a bunch of classic monsters, but I'm not sure what time frame that is.
Well, I mean, Darkmoor Village, which is supposedly the overarching name for this side of the park. The gimmick is sort of leaning into the time period of I mean, the irony is that it's Frankenstein's great-great-granddaughter, that Victoria, who's supposedly driving the story of that. So it's like, oh, wait a minute, the Frankenstein, I want to say, was set in the late 1800s or thereabouts. Horse-drawn carriages, torches, and the like. So it's like, okay, so if it's his great-great-granddaughter, shouldn't this be set in like the 1960s or something? Or am I bad at math here?
Wearing a poodle skirt? Right. No. I'm glad they preserved. This is a very well preserved town of the 1800s. So, but I'm very excited about this land. This is truthfully, out of all the ones that I've seen, the one that I'm most excited for. If you say, all right, we're going to Epic Universe, which land are you heading toward? I'm going through that portal first and foremost. And like you mentioned earlier, the effects of the lightning in that tunnel sound quite amazing.
Okay. Well, again, what I have seen so far of Epic Universe has impressed. I think at this point we're only waiting for, what is it? The Wizarding World Ministry of Magic to drop at this point, right? We've
right. We just need a date.
Yeah. And also, have we had detailed info on the Helios Hotel yet? I think we're also waiting on that, right?
Yeah, the hotel. So we've gone through the entry, the celestial area, but we have not talked. And I'm guessing they're going to make a big deal out of the hotel. I mean, it is in the land, so I don't know if that's considered a land or so forth. But we have some more information to go. But this was the one I was waiting for, so I was excited. I mean, I think the predictions were all correct when we saw the lightning bolts and the clouds with the date. So more. I'm sure there'll be more to come. No doubt. As time goes, we'll see the finished product through some aerial photos and probably some more. So this was a great day to really get on the internet.
I guess the other thing is, I'm just intrigued by at one point they showed art of basically you can do a meet and greet, for example, with Frankenstein's monster and his bride. And it's one of these things I look at that and it's like, okay, that looks cool on paper, but when you have little kids who are shy about going up to Anna and Elsa, who they love, when it's a universal monster, somebody in full makeup who's got the bolt in their neck and the big shoes, I just wonder how many kids an hour you're going to get through that space.
Well, Jim, I think they have a solution in their back pocket. I don't know if you saw this, but you can also meet with the Invisible Man. So if you don't meet with Frankenstein, just step aside over there and just take a picture, and then you're covered.
Well, all right, there we go. Okay, yes, it's so much easier to meet with the Invisible Man. Very less intimidating. Okay, anyway, so all right, so again, Eric and I very much enjoyed materials made available today. Looking forward to visiting Dark Universe and wandering around Darkmoor Village and just seeing again over time. Given the source material and the themes of the attractions, how Ops handles this. A scary part of the park. I mean, well, look, Eric, if anybody's experienced with moving people through scary spaces, it's Universal. I mean, that what 30 plus years of Halloween Horror Nights at this point. They know the drill. So
Right.
We'll just have to see what happens here. So, okay, so that's the big news for this week's show. But of course, we also have news or not, and you found a couple of fun stories for this week, Eric.
Well, I found some quick ones here, and this one is just even breaking because I was just on Twitter right before we joined in. So we found this earlier. So this is really funny that I thought, but it looks like it's not current. It might have been a couple weeks ago, but over in the Men in Black Alien Attack ride, they have like a queue where there's bulletin boards.
Oh yeah,
right. And there was a note, a green note that was push pinned up that said for sale, Galactic Star Cruiser Halcyon Low Mile Sea Agent B. And so that went viral today on the internet. And I said, I got to share that with Jim. It's funny. I don't know if it's still there, but it is certainly. So let me ask you, does Universal take a lot of jabs at Disney? Because it sounds like they have some fun.
They do. In fact, I'm almost sorry that you didn't make it into the park to see the queue space for the Shrek 4D film, because again, my friend Zane Yench, who put that together, big Disney fan, and so he created all sorts of things like the Enchanted Tick Room, and the great moments with Mr. Farquaad, and just these things that definitely took a poke at Disney. And there has been Universal has for years delighted on twitting on Disney. So this is continuing that tradition. I do hope that this note card on a bulletin board survives, because if ever anybody's going to be aware of a space going vehicle that could come up for sale, the agent, the MIB agents, the Men in Black. So.
There you go. Well, the other story that I had, I just thought was a nice little nod, and I'm excited for this when we head down to the park. So it looks to be that they have at Universal Studios, there are placards in the park now around where attractions are, and they have a QR code that actually takes you to YouTube videos. That I watched one today that was just a little 30-second that was just, hey, this is used to be here, and it was for the Back to the Future ride. So I don't know necessarily if it's news, but it's a nice little thing if you're missing Universal and you're at home and you just kind of want to get some nice little information here. You probably find people that shared the URL link online, and you can watch some nice, and they were nice little short documentary type things saying, hey, the one on Back to the Future was, they showed a little bit of the model arts of the people building it, and then they showed some of the attraction. But of course, that's not there anymore, but they have these standing outside, and that was outside of the Simpsons ride. So they have that throughout the park, as it said. So that's a relatively new thing since our last recording.
No, I especially for the 60th anniversary summer, I think that's a smart thing to do.
Right. So. And speaking of the 60th anniversary, there was Celebration Expands. So there was some announcements for the Hollywood Studios or the Hollywood Studios Universal Lot tour that they brought out some photo ops. You saw that you can actually take some pictures with the Back to the Future film set, the DeLorean.
There we go.
But you can do that now, and that looks like they pushed that out until August 11th. So from June 22nd to August 11th. Okay. The other thing is you can meet with Woody and Winnie Woodpecker, which I didn't know Winnie existed. So.
Well, and again, what I love is it's Minnie Mouse and Winnie Woodpecker. Just evidently, you need an any name to be a girlfriend of a cartoon.
That's right. And we talked about their the popcorn bucket that had Woody driving that. Did you see the picture of the donut that you can get that is of the tram tour?
Yeah, that you shared that in the research info you sent along today. Yeah, I mean. I guess if I squint, I can see that is the Glamour tram from 64. I mean, it's a donut. I'm going to eat it anyway, but it was just sort of like, all right, okay, I can kind of see that. And while we're talking about Universal Studios Hollywood, we talked just a moment or two ago about Halloween Horror Nights, and on our last show we mentioned all of the new offerings that are coming to Universal Orlando for Halloween Horror Nights. I just wanted to take a moment here to acknowledge again that there is obviously the West Coast version of Halloween Horror Nights, which will be offered on select nights at Universal Studios Hollywood between September 5th and November 3rd of this year. Eric, we now know the theme of at least two of the mazes that are going to be offered there. First one is based on the Quiet Place film franchise. By the way, third film in that series, a prequel, A Quiet Place Day One, arrives in theaters next week on June 27th. And then the other maze that the folks in Hollywood have revealed so far is Dead Exposure, Death Valley. And this one is supposed to take visitors to Halloween Horror Nights into a secret military lab where an attempt to make a super soldier has gone south and resulted in an army of radioactive zombies. So, well, that seems fun, don't you think?
Absolutely. I can't wait.
Okay.
No, but if you're into the jump scares, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of them.
There we go. Okay, now to head back to Orlando. Now, we'd mentioned on our last show that DreamWorks Land opened just this past Friday, June 14th. But in addition to that, on that very same day, two brand new nighttime shows opened at the Universal Orlando Resort. And had you had a chance yet to look at any of the videos or any of the stuff for these two yet, Eric?
So I'm going to be very honest with you here, Jim. And it's probably going to get some people angry with me.
Okay.
I don't necessarily care for spoilers.
Okay.
So I will typically watch things if I know that I don't really have a chance to go see it in person. But since we have a trip booked, I've seen it kind of, but I haven't went online and watched the whole thing. So I've seen some pictures of like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from footage from somebody standing at a gas station saying, "Oh, I can see him from this angle." So I've seen some stuff, but I'm gonna let you do the description, and then when I see it in person, I'll come back with full reports.
That level of self-control is admirable. Again, I'm the terrible person who peeks at the last page of books. Just sort of, I'm awful. Okay, anyway, so first up is CineSational, a symphonic spectacular. Just again, we're going to try to keep this spoiler free, but it's a 22-minute long show, Eric, which is more than twice the length of Disney Dreams That Soared, the drone show that debuted over at Disney Springs late last month. And CineSational isn't just drones. It's drones and music and fireworks and fountains that shoot 130 feet in the air, movie footage projected on water screens, in addition to projection mapping on buildings facing into Universal Studios Lagoon and moving spotlights. I mean, it's the whole nighttime toolbox. And it's interesting you brought up the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, because it's what's kind of fascinating about CineSational is it has an interesting mix. It has nods to attractions that are no longer in the park, like, for example, Ghostbusters and Back to the Future. There's a good amount of DreamWorks stuff. I mean, for example, for How to Train Your Dragon, they form a giant Toothless with the drones out over the park. And there's also musical numbers that key off of Shrek and Trolls. There's also nods to Universal franchises like Fast and Furious and the Jurassic World films, likewise The Mummy. And then for those who enjoyed us talking about Darkmoor Village, there's also a section that highlights the classic Universal monsters. And it's not really a spoiler, but this thing ends with first you see Elliot and E.T. on their bike flying in front of the moon, and then you get the Universal Globe formed out of those 600 drones. Now, what's kind of interesting is I'm going to say this is a show you really do need to watch from one area, and that would be Universal Studios Florida's Central Park, because the drones seem to be staged out behind San Francisco. Though, as you just mentioned, if somebody's out at the gas station and is seeing the Stay Puft Umbrella Man in the sky, I guess it's good from other angles. And I'm going to say, I liked what I saw of this. It was very ambitious, but if I'm being completely honest, Eric, I liked Universal's Cinematic Spectacular, 100 Years of Magic, which was the show the park had from May of 2012 through October of 2017 better. Because I think that had a more emotional through line of the history of the studio. But again, I'm going to reserve judgment till I get to see this in person. And more to the point, I'm going to love to hear what you and your lovely bride Lauren have to say about this when you get to see it during your trip. Anyway, now again, that's the new nighttime show that dropped at Universal Studios Florida. Now, in the other park over at Islands, we got the brand new Hogwarts Always projection mapping show. And this is now, Eric, this is the fourth in a series of projection mapping shows that are done on the Hogwarts Castle. And what's kind of interesting is this is something that actually started on the West Coast. Summer of 2017, the nighttime lights at Hogwarts Castle debuted at Universal Studios Hollywood. And by December of that same year, it had come to Florida, but at that point we were getting our second show, the Magic of Christmas at Hogwarts, and then those two would alternate, and then starting in 2021, we got a Halloween show, the Dark Arts at Hogwarts Castle. So this one isn't holiday specific. It's not the Magic of Christmas or Dark Arts. It's what's interesting about Hogwarts Always, Eric, is that it basically takes you through a typical school year at Hogwarts School for Wizarding. I mean, it starts off with you getting your acceptance letter, which is delivered by an owl. You then watch as kids shop for their school supplies in Diagon Alley, and then they take the Hogwarts Express out to the school, get sorted into the specific house. You listen as they take lessons, and just like Wingardium Leviosa. You also get to see them sort of misbehaving using the Marauders map, and then almost having bad things happen in the Forbidden Forest. And the show ultimately ends with the awarding of the House Cup. And that's where this one kind of gets interesting, Eric, in that it has 4 different endings. In fact, right now, the video that's up online shows that the House Cup is going to Slytherin. So it'll be interesting over time to see if we can get to see what the other 3 endings of the show look like. And it's not a particularly long show. It's 7 minutes long. And in fact, all of the projection shows, with the exception of the Dark Art show, which is 9 minutes long, they're all tend to be 7 minutes. And they basically run continuously in Hogwarts or Hogsmeade Village. They will start as early as 6:45 at night. Most nights they don't start till 7:15. Eric, this is largely because it has to be dark enough for the projection mapping show to read. But every 15 or 20 minutes, the show repeats. And
Okay.
on a night like tonight, where Islands Adventures up until 10, you'll have, 12 different opportunities to watch the show before the park closes. By the way, very best place to watch this show is at the top of the street in Hogsmeade Village, about 150 feet back from the castle, which if this were, say, the fireworks show at the Magic Kingdom, it would be impossible to walk up and watch the show. But the fact that it is repeated every 20 minutes or so, you'll always have a good shot to getting a primo view of this thing.
Right. That I was kind of excited when you shared that information that it was running so frequently. There's nothing worse. I don't typically like standing in crowds, especially for fireworks. Like, I'm one that always is like, I'd just rather have a worse view and not have to be crammed in there. So the fact is, you could have a good view, not have to be crammed, and you really just can kind of plan your day around it. So I think that's quite good. And this one wasn't originally something that I was excited about. I was like, whatever. But the family and I we're on movie 6 now. So we've crammed almost all the Harry Potters down in the last like maybe 7 to 10 days. Like I said, we're cramming in Universal films to get ready for our trip. So I still don't know what happens. We're still now Deathly Hallows. No spoilers again. And somehow I've shielded myself for the last so many years. I'm not sure how this whole Harry Potter Voldemort thing ends. So I'm pretty excited.
Cool. Very cool.
And I even took the online test to find out. I guess I'm a Hufflepuff. Jim, have you taken one of those online quizzes to know?
Sadly, yes. And I as it turns out, I'm supposed to be a house elf. Evidently, I'm supposed to clean up dirty dishes or that sort of thing. I guess I am not a magical creature. So now,
that's fantastic.
Speaking of things that have opened just over the past week or so, we also, we started off the tonight's show by talking about the newest land for Epic Universe, but the actual preview center opened in City Walk just over this weekend. And what did we think of that?
Oh, I love the giant model. I really do. I mean, I will start tearing stuff out of my house so I can just build giant models of different lands. Better. So luckily I have a wife that won't allow that to happen, but I was all about, I've watched many of the videos online of, going around. So it's not just the model though. It is the entire, they're doing a lot of merchandise, for each section, and each portal has its own like area. So you can really get yourself all geared up for by the time Epic Universe opens. But did you see the app with the augmented reality you could download?
I saw that is an option. In fact, this is the what's kind of intriguing to me is you mentioned the QR code thing for the 60th anniversary at Universal Hollywood. And it just, again, the problem is I'm a 65-year-old man who can barely operate his phone. And the notion of, it's like, oh, cool, another thing that I won't know how to do. That
Jim, just grab your camera and hold it. Most smartphones now automatically will do it. Take you to a website, download. Listen, we're there together. This is my world. This is what I deal with. You're in good hands now, Jim.
Then I might actually get to experience these things.
Well, I will tell you, so you can watch, even if you don't do it, go online and watch some of the users. The augmented reality, you hold your app over the model and it actually will showcase like people walking through and the rides going on the actual model track. Like the Donkey Kong ride goes through. It's really cool. And just today, obviously, they launched the Dark Universe portion. So if you hover over the show building, you'll actually see a couple of the show scenes, or at least one of the show scenes where it seems like there's caskets and ghosts are popping out and following the Omnimover-like thing. So check it out. I wish I was down there now, but luckily there are a lot of vloggers out there that will show anything and everything for us to see.
I do appreciate the folks like Alicia Stella who are down there on the front line providing us with great coverage. So, okay.
Right. And I think she has a video coming out tonight. She's announcing it. So by the time you listen to this, there should be a video there. So listen to our podcast, check out the video, and give thumbs up to all.
Cool. Okay. So that pretty much does it for the news portion of this week's show. But when we get back, we're going to continue our look at, Universal's early attempts to bring its classic monsters into the theme parks. But first, this, and we're back. Okay, so on the most recent edition of the Epic Universal podcast, Eric and I talked about Castle Dracula at the Universal Studios Hollywood, which again, as we mentioned, that show was a relatively short-lived attraction in the upper lot. And kind of an interesting side note here, and something we didn't mention on our last show, Eric, but a number of Universal Studios Hollywood veterans reached out to said, oh, look, you really need to talk about this aspect of the Castle Dracula show. So here we go. And evidently one of the main reasons that Jay Stein, who was the gentleman in charge of MCA Recreation, the folks who handled the theme park side of things at Universal. One of the reasons he fast-tracked this project for Universal's West Coast theme park was back in '79 era. Universal Pictures was readying a Dracula remake. This film was based on the hit revival of the stage version of Dracula, which originally debuted on Broadway back in 1927 with Bela Lugosi in the title role. In fact, it was the enormous success of that stage version of Bram Stoker's story that convinced Carl Laemmle, the then head of Universal Pictures, to make a movie version of Dracula, which Universal put out in '31. And not only that, but Carl had the foresight to hire Bela Lugosi to reprise the role that he played on the stage in the movie. But okay, so as Universal had done back in 1931, but again, the studio hired the very same actor who played Dracula in the 1977 Broadway revival of the stage version of the story, which in this case was 4-time Tony Award winner Frank Langella. And he played the title role in the studio's new movie version of Dracula. And because Jay Stein, had a movie that was being directed by John Badham, who had directed the previous year's box office smash for Paramount, Saturday Night Fever. Movie had a score by John Williams. It was starring the same actor who appeared in the smash hit Broadway revival of Dracula. Stein thought, I have an absolute guaranteed box office behemoth headed away, which is why I should get ahead of this. I should build something for the parks that then keys off of Universal's can't miss, soon to be released, brand new movie version of Dracula. But here's what happened, Eric. Even with all of this stuff going for it, Universal's all new movie version of Dracula, when it's finally released to theaters in July of '79, doesn't connect with audiences for some reason. Cost the studio $12 million to make. Only sells $31 million worth of tickets, which, given the way Hollywood does math, meant that Universal's all-new movie version of Dracula barely covered its production and promotional costs, let alone turning a profit. But
Jim, I watched the trailer. Mm-hmm. I made sure to watch the trailer, and I can see why it didn't. I mean, granted, I'm comparing a 1970s movie. I mean, at the I literally liked the aesthetics in the castle, and then they started talking, and I said, "Okay, all right, we won't be putting this in the queue."
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing. It worked on the stage with that sort of stylization, but for whatever reason, when you put it up on the big screen, woof, it was bad. But here's the thing. By the fall of '79, Stein has already spent all of this money on the development of the Castle Dracula show for Universal Studios Hollywood. And even though Universal's new movie version of Dracula has been a box office disappointment, Jay is now reluctant to walk away from everything he's already invested in the Castle Dracula project. So the construction of that $3 million show goes forward. It opened 44 years ago this month on July 13th, 1980. And if you listen to our last Epic Universal podcast, you know how that story turned out. So lesson here is there is no such thing as a sure thing, at least as far as Hollywood is concerned. All right. So we now jump ahead 15 years, and writer-director Stephen Sommers, who's had a lot of success over at Disney, adapting classic tales like Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, and Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist to the big screen. Now Sommers wants to try his hand at horror. So he writes a film that was originally called Tentacle for Disney, which gets released to theaters in 1998 under a different, far more generic title, Deep Rising. Have you ever seen this, Eric?
In 1998, I was definitely seeing films in the theater, but this was not one. You definitely talk about some of the mishaps here.
Well, this is what's intriguing. This movie gets made at Disney, which is a studio that doesn't have an appetite for horror, isn't very good at it. I mean, Disney just doesn't seem to understand the genre. For example, they took Deep Rising, which was clearly meant to be a summer blockbuster, and they sent it out in the theaters in late January of 1998, and they completely bobbled the marketing for the movie. I mean, if you go now to see the poster that they used to advertise this thing, it's Eric, it's one giant eyeball. All right, with the catchphrase for this film is "full scream ahead," and their idea of, oh well, I got to go see that movie. The line on the poster that's supposed to entice you to go buy a ticket is from the special effects team that made Total Recall and Star Wars. This is literally the best Disney could do.
Jim, when I Googled it, I really didn't understand what it was. Yeah. I was like, I'm not sure what this movie is at all. So yeah, they bumbled that real bad.
Now, on the other hand, executives at Universal actually saw Deep Rising when it was out in theater. They loved this movie's mix of horror, humor, and big action scenes. And by the way, worth noting here that when the Stephen Sommers movie finally began airing on cable frequently in the early 2000s, it finally found its audience. It became a cult classic. So anyway, Executive Universal invites Sommers to come over to the Black Tower. By the way, that's the name for the skyscraper overlooking Universal Studios Hollywood, where MCA had its corporate headquarters. But they want to talk to Stephen about him coming to make a horror movie for Universal. And to be specific, these executives at Universal wanted to know if Stephen would be interested in doing something with their classic monsters. And to which Sommers supposedly replied, well, I don't know. I mean, Frankenstein made me sad. I always felt sorry for him. And Dracula was kind of cool and sexy, but the mummy just plain scared me. So Sommers wanted to make a run at doing a new mummy movie for Universal, but in a whole new way, Eric. Not as a horror film per se, but as an action-adventure film, very much in the style of Raiders of the Lost Ark, that would then have some horror elements. And in fact, Stephen's take on this material basically was, well, what if Indiana Jones and Marion found themselves back in Egypt, only this time instead of battling Nazis, they're now face to face with this 3,000-year-old mummy. So execs at Universe love this idea. They give Sommers $80 million and say, go off, make that mummy movie. Comes out in May of 99, which, by the way, May, start of summer blockbuster season, because Universal actually knows how to market a horror movie. It does so well at the box office, makes $416 million worldwide in ticket sales, that Universal's Mummy remake actually winds up in the top 10 for all films released in 1999.
And I saw it, Jim, and so there you go. Universal, I remember seeing it in 1999.
And what do you remember? I mean, obviously, again, this is Brendan Fraser. What did you think of the film?
I think we all enjoyed it. So we were a bunch of hooligan high schoolers, and we always picked on a Friday or Saturday which movie we went to see. So they probably got about 8 or 10 of us, and I do recall enjoying that movie.
Well, and given the success, Universal immediately turns to Sommers and said, how'd you like to do a sequel? Stephen says, sure, goes off and writes The Mummy Returns. Now, Sommers this time around given a slightly bigger budget, $98 million versus $80 million, which results in The Mummy's Return doing slightly better at the worldwide box office than the original Mummy. $435 million versus $416 million.
We're going to credit The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
Thank you for bringing him up. Because again, that was really kind of controversial. When they did that, it's like, the wrestling guy, he's going to be in your movie?
You're speaking my language, Jim. 1999, that's pure WWF Attitude Era. Yeah. That got me in the theater, so it worked and catapulted Dwayne Johnson to this point today.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, just the other night, Nancy and I had, I want to say Freeform had on The Jungle Cruise. With Wayne and Emily Blunt, and not the greatest movie, but he's still a lot of fun to watch.
Absolutely.
All right. So anyway, Universal very happy with their return on this investment. More to the point, they want to bring the Mummy franchise into their theme parks as soon as possible, which is why Just a year after The Mummy Returns first arrives in theaters, May of 2001, which again, summer blockbuster season, because Universal, unlike Disney, understands how to market a horror movie. They shut down their confrontational attraction in September of 2002, so this can then be transformed into The Revenge of the Mummy, which is an indoor roller coaster, which opens at that theme park May of 2004. By the way, Universal Studios Hollywood gets a clone of this very same Revenge of the Mummy ride. That version goes into the old E.T. Adventure Show building, which used to be located on the lower lot on the West Coast. That one closed May of 2003, and just 15 months later, Universal Studios Hollywood gets their Revenge of the Mummy. That opens on June 24th, 2004. Just 35 days separated, when the East Coast and the West Coast version of this attraction open. So again, point here, Universal can move fast when it's motivated. Now, what's interesting, at this point, Universal turns to Sommers and says, how would you feel about making a third Mummy movie? And Stephen says no. Because, well, look, as Sommers revealed in an interview that he did with the Hollywood Reporter just last month, as he looked back to the 25th anniversary of the release of his first Mummy movie, he said, I didn't want to do a third movie because I felt the first two really came together. I'm really proud of both of them. And to be blunt, the third installments of series are just very hard to pull off. But you're going to love this story, Eric. What also impacted Sommers' decision not to make the third Mummy movie was around the same time, late 2003, early 2004. This is when what was then known as Vivendi Universal Entertainment and NBC decided to merge and form a single corporation, which then became known as NBC Universal.
Right.
Now, where this gets kind of weird is that NBC had landed the broadcast rights for the 2008 Olympics, especially be specific, the Summer Games, which were going to be held that time around in Beijing. And to hear Sommers tell the story, there was this executive high up in NBC who got the idea that Universal should make a third Mummy movie that would then somehow promote the fact that NBC had the broadcast rights to the 2008 Summer Games. And again, this is a quote from the Hollywood Reporter story. So he begins to hear from senior officials at Universal Pictures who are asking, is there any way you could do a Mummy movie that was set in China? It's like, what?
Yeah, that I'm out. That's it. Listen, we are all about synergy, but that's a little too far.
There we go. So this is what Stephen knew. Maybe it's time to step away from this particular film franchise. Put it in the review. That said, though, Sommers' success with reviving the Mummy, Universal's Mummy movies, turning that IP into a lucrative film franchise some 67 years after Universal's first Mummy movie came out in 31, 32. The suits up in the Black Tower asked Stephen if he'd be interested in doing something with Universal's other classic monsters like Dracula, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein's monsters. And Stephen did have an idea. Something that, like his Mummy movies, would take a story that had previously been grouped in the horror genre and turn it more into an action adventure. Now, mind you, in order to pull this off, to pull off what Sommers is proposing here, he would need a really big budget. But given Stephen's track record at the box office, again, this seemed like a safe bet, which is why executives at Universal agreed to give him $170 million, which is more than twice the amount that Sommers had been given to make his first Mummy movie. And so what's the name of this can't miss guaranteed hit that Stephen Sommers was going to be making for Universal Pictures? Van Helsing. And in the next installment of this series, we're going to talk about how this based on classic Universal Monsters movie went totally off the rails. More importantly, we're going to get to talk about the short-lived attraction that this movie inspired that was built on the upper lot at Universal Studios Hollywood, and that was Van Helsing Fortress Dracula. So,
Jim, what's the odds of us running into good old Van Helsing in a tavern at a Dark Universe? You think he's one of the hounds that they're speaking of?
it's so interesting you say that, because we're going to get into this in the next installment. But again, Van Helsing was envisioned as a franchise. I mean, in fact, there are stories about how when they finished production of the first movie, Universal actually paid the folks that they in Europe, where they built on the back lot the Transylvania, and it was a notion of leave that stuff in place because we're coming back to shoot Van Helsing 2. And no, there are still people at Universal who believe strongly in this property. And what's fact, as early as 2012, there were talks about doing a reboot. In fact, what was fascinating about that reboot is they talked about Tom Cruise playing Van Helsing. And as recently as 2020, there was discussion of yet another reboot. In fact, I want to say James Wan was listed as the writer-director. So it's entirely possible that at some point in the very near future, somebody going into the Dark Universe, wandering around the Darkmoor Village, might run into a Van Helsing, because Universal seems to want to get back into this franchise. But again, we'll talk more about this in further installments of the series. But for now, I think it's time to bring this week's episode to a close here, correct?
I think so. And this is a community driven. So if you guys are out there, I'm going to finish my Harry Potter movies, and I'm going to work on watching Van Helsing before next week's episode. Okay. So if you're with us, hey, give us a follow. Give me a follow at Eri Hersey over on X or Instagram, and also share. Why don't we just live tweet the Van Helsing? So let us know what you think. Jim, if they want to tell you or reach out to you, where can they find you at?
Well, okay. I'm on Twitter and Facebook as Jim Hill Media, and I'm over on Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. And you, Eric? Where can they find you?
Yeah, we're at Eri Hersey. You can chat with me there, and thank you everybody for the shirt recommendations last week. We went out. We have 6 or 7 new shirts I'll be donning at when we go down to Universal. So that'll be exciting. So Jim, we have some other podcasts here that you do each week.
Yes. We of course have the Mothership Disney Dish with Len Testa. In fact, he and I will be recording a brand new episode tomorrow. We also have Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, who just returned from Annecy and came back with all sorts of amazing news about many of the animated features that were showcased there. Brian Gaughan and I, this coming weekend, will be recording a brand new looking at Lucasfilm, where we will be talking about The Acolyte. I want to say we're 3 episodes in now, 4 episodes. And then, of course, we have I Want That Too, the podcast video series I do with your lovely bride, Lauren. And we just brought Noah Valladolid, who is the co-host of another podcast we're now hosting on Jim Hill Media, the Manufacturing the Magic. But Noah has one of the most amazing Oswald the Lucky Rabbit collections, and was showcasing some of the pieces in his collection and telling the stories of how he acquired it. And again, a great interview, well worth seeking out. And then, of course, we have Len and Mai's first ever video series, which, by the way, is produced by Eric. This is Disney Unpacked, and we've been doing that with veteran Imagineer Jim Schul. And we are wrapping up this month, which is been about Mater's Junkyard Jamboree. And Eric, you're in the middle of editing next month's episode.
Right before we started, I just got you guys dive into Bugs Land. It's actually a great episode. So we just got to find some pictures and footage to put over top, but that'll be ready for us by the time you listen to this.
Cool. Okay. So, all right. So that brings us to the end of this week's episode. And next time for the Epic Universal podcast, we will, of course, be continuing our story of Van Helsing, but also again, getting Eric ready for he and his family's first official trip to the Universal Orlando Resort. And we'll be talking a lot about the prep there and what you're looking forward to. And In that same window of time, won't the new parade at the park be debuting? Or
we're going to see so much new stuff. It's all going to be new to me, but
cool.
yes, we're going to have a lot to report on. So I'll be taking pictures. We might be having videos. Who knows? You ask questions, give us suggestions. I love to hear from it. And thanks for everybody that's also been very supportive and telling me where to go and how to get there. I mean, I got walking tips of where we should walk, all type. So we're going to do it all. So we're going to record it all, and it will no longer just be me hypothetically saying, well, I'll actually have some new information. I'll be like, all right, this is what I did. So it's very exciting.
Cool.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for listening. On behalf of Jim Hill, I'm Eri Hersey, and we'll catch you next time.
Take care.